This podcast is part of the Pull Up a Chair podcast network. Let's build community through connection, conversation, and collaboration.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty. Man, we just putting on a show.
Hi, I'm Jake.
And I'm V,
And you're listening to the It's Working podcast.
where we take deep dives into mental health, breaking stigmas, and starting conversations.
Oh, you know, I try to find a purpose in my life to drive me, to guide me. Oh, doctor, I feel dead inside.
We are not healthcare professionals, and our opinions should not be taken as facts or as medical advice. To see any sources, resources, or study we speak about in this podcast, please check out our website, linked in the description of this podcast. If you or a loved one is struggling, there is hope and there is help. Some helpful resources can be found on our website, linked in the description of this podcast. It's Working Podcast is a production from the Pull Up a Chair Foundation. All opinions in this podcast belong to our hosts and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Pull Up a Chair Foundation. Welcome, listeners. We got a new co-host, my dear friend Jake. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jake. I'm just happy to be here. Do I talk more?
You can look at me to make it less awkward.
This is difficult. I've never done this before. I'm kind of nervous. But, yeah, I'm looking forward to just talking about, or starting the conversation, right? That's what we're doing here. We're starting the conversation.
Yeah, we're starting the conversation. And just so listenerships know where you're coming from in terms of your relationship to mental health, what has your experience with it been so far?
Right, yeah. So, I've been working with, I worked with children for about 5 years in a city-run program. From there, I worked with youth in a nonprofit organization for another 2. I did some time studying the Bible. I wanted to be a pastor for a little bit, became a missionary for about 1.5 years, and then wound up doing, once again, nonprofit work, where I think I'm going to stay for a little bit longer now, because just recounting my resume, that sounds like a lot of bouncing around, so I think I'm liking where I'm at right now.
Yeah, you're liking where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of mental health struggles, have you ever dealt with any sort of mental issues or mental disorders?
Yeah, so personally, my mom, when I was old enough to like understand what it meant, she confessed that we have a history of like depression in our family. It's hereditary. My grandpa had it, his father before him, and so my mom said it's very important that you understand this is something that our family kind of goes through. My dad, I don't know that we have anything on my dad's side, but I wouldn't be surprised. We don't really have those conversations. McCarley men, we don't really talk about feelings so much, unfortunately. But yeah. So
it sounds like you had a really supportive mother, though.
Yeah, no. Both of them were supportive in their own right, of course, right? But mom just more of the emotional, communicator. And dad was more of the sort of, strong, stoic sort of, figurehead of the family. So it was more of a presence than anything. But, yeah. So, and I failed to mention, but also, recently just went through about a month or so course online for peer specialist work, so I'll start doing that pretty soon here. Is close to a month away. I'll start group facilitation.
Oh boy, right about the time we finish recording the whole season.
That is the timing, right?
I mean, okay, coming from a person who literally could go back and finish her 3 units and say, oh, look at me, bachelor's in psychology. It's just when you know. Eventually, you're close enough where it's yeah, I don't have the piece of paper, but I could give you my hours and hours of research and paperwork that I had to do to hopefully get the fancier paper later.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to get started too.
Yeah.
Because it's, I've been wanting to do this since as long as I knew this was an option, working with the Sacramento Youth Center. It's a bit of a name drop there, but
Yeah, you did just do a big name drop there.
can we do that? I don't know.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I mean, unless you signed an NDA at any point, in which case, no.
I don't believe I did.
If you signed an NDA, you know you signed an NDA.
Okay, then I'm pretty sure I didn't.
It's a piece of paper saying that if you say any of the following things, you're getting sued.
I definitely know I didn't sign that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I hope that you look at stuff before you sign.
Okay, so I'm guilty of just hitting I accept with all the terms and services.
You monster.
I try and read. Listen, I try and read, but like when it gets to like page like 7 and I'm still like, not even a quarter of the way through, it's like, okay, I get it. They're gonna like ask for my body when I'm dead. Like it's probably gonna be like a bunch of terrible stuff, but I really just want to play the new update in Minecraft. Like,
okay, so when the robots finally take over to take us to like the metrics, you will have already
the metrics.
Yeah, the matrix.
Oh my
And
God.
you already gave them permission.
Huh?
You already gave them permission.
Okay, I suppose. But
Yeah.
I mean, how long is that going to be? Like, I might be like old and gray and just like, it's my time.
Oh, so you're just accepting it.
Well, I mean, listen, if it were to happen tomorrow, definitely I'm going to fight. But like, I'm old and gray. I don't know. Like,
So you're not going to be a spry old man, like giving sassy wisdom to the youth rebellion. You're just resigning yourself to death.
no, okay. So I've had this. We're getting off into the weeds here, but I have had this conversation with like my family and close friends about like zombie apocalypse plans, and like I always get really frustrated when they're like, I know if there's zombies, I'm out. Like I'm not doing it. Like they'd rather like
Really?
they wouldn't live in that world. I got really upset when my
kidding
sister.
me?
My own sister said, like, if ever there are zombies, like, you're gonna have to take me out. It's like, no, I'm, like,
No.
dragging you through the apocalypse with me. Like, we're in this together. How dare you? I'm not wasting a perfectly good arrow on you. But, like, also, like, that's, like, not even funny.
It's
How
kind
selfish.
It's kind of funny. Well, okay. So I don't know if any of the listeners listen to my other podcast. But Ryan and I recorded an episode where we talked about passing on burdens. And it sounds like she wants to pass on the entirety of living through the apocalypse on you.
That's definitely what it started as. And then I was like, listen, we'll get mom and dad. We'll go, like, probably somewhere toward, like, the ocean. We'll get some sort of, like, water purification or, like, filtration system going. And we'll just be chill. Oh, no. I'm sorry. I'm taking another friend's plan. No, my plan is to go to the mountains because it requires more energy to travel uphill, which means zombies would naturally want to go like towards the ocean.
You see, this is why you and I are friends, because that's my zombie apocalypse plans.
Right.
I want to get as high as I can, but just low enough that the snow defrosts quickly for gardening and planting, because that's the future of humanity. If zombie apocalypse ever happens, it's going to be those who can garden that survive.
Right. And those who can like armor and outfit the fighters that protect the gardeners as well.
Yeah, like they have a spot in the world.
They have a spot. I was gonna say like that's everything that I have to offer is like I've had friends that told me specifically like we're gonna find you in the zombie apocalypse and we'll just bring you scrap metal if you like outfit us. And I was like, bet.
So you're good. You'll have a tribe of people behind you.
Well, I'll have customers. I don't know if
You'll
I'll have a
have-
tribe.
No, you're charismatic enough.
Disagree. But that's neither here nor there.
That's neither here nor there. All right, so, okay, guys. Mental health podcast. I just
Right.
spotted some imposter syndrome right there, which we'll definitely have to dig into later
Okay.
in the future episode where we talk about it. But I also heard you mention earlier about your mother like being very open about mental health. I have never experienced that, like the openness of it. So tell me a little bit more about what it was like. Do you think that she was ever looking out for signs for you, or was it just that one conversation?
I think it was more, well, that's hard to say. I'm starting to backtrack through my life now a little bit more, having gone through like the peer specialist program and like looking for like, what was the real memory there? Because sometimes like we like to put rose-colored glasses on our childhoods, and and consider like, you know, what we wanted them to be. And then there's also looking at them objectively and finding out like, oh, that wasn't exactly such a happy memory. So I started going back through the childhood, and those conversations I think were more in the way of like, there's a cliff right in front of you, and if I didn't say like, hey, watch your next step, could be your last, that would be kind of terrible if you had like the knowledge to like help someone avoid such a tragedy. So I think in the way of telling me like, you know, so we have a history of depression in our family. That was more or less like the, hey, watch out for this thing. Because it didn't really come with like steps of how to avoid it, what it looked like, how it manifests differently. It was just like, so you know we have hereditary depression in our family. And if you don't know what depression is, then that's, what do you do with that information? It's like, cool, thanks.
So she gave you a piece to the puzzle?
A piece of the puzzle, which then I had to go and do my own research, and then also like catalog how it does affect me, because my family manifested very differently. Sometimes I notice my mom, she will be quick to anger. She'll become a little bit more irritable or like less patient with us, and that's typically when she feels like things are not going, you know, the way that she wants them to. That's when she's in the middle of it.
I see.
But for me, I isolate. And so I know, like, when I don't want to be around people, if, God forbid, I ever, like, you know, stop coming out to Kuraheim, I'm really going through it. But, like, yeah, it's the isolation because I don't want to be around people. And then it's, I listen to the, I don't want to say the voices because that's something entirely different, but it's like the Jiminy Cricket on your shoulder telling you like everything's going to be okay. But it's like his cousin who he's not as charismatic and is more like, everything's going to be awful.
So Jim Bob Cricket.
Jim Bob Cricket. I like that. Jim Bob Cricket, who's like, everything sucks. No one likes you. You're better off just staying in your room. So, and when I start to hear him, I know that I need to do the steps to get back to neutral, which I know we start to talk about those a little bit more in like public school now, but one of those is like just getting out and getting some sunlight, doing aerobic exercises, so like not forcing yourself to socialize, but just trying harder to socialize with more people.
Dip your toe in it,
because one of the things about depression is like some of the things that will help you break the cycle of depression are the most difficult to do. Oh, yeah. Like when you want to isolate, that's when you should be around your friends the most, is because your friends are going to help you, you know, get out of that. It's really hard to stay angry when a bunch of your favorite people are like doing your favorite things with you.
Yeah, like it's
not angry. It's hard to stay downtrodden or upset when a bunch of your favorite people are doing your favorite things with you. So yeah. And then, so that was the beginning and end of that conversation. Was like, hey, watch out for this thing. It's a stumbling block right in front of you didn't even know about.
Gosh. You know, that's so interesting because I came from a family that pretended that mental health issues were just a personality flaw. Keep in mind, my mother has bipolar 2. Yeah. So. Oh, man. It was like, how is there basically 2 different people inside of this woman? You're going to tell me that's normal? And then I have major depressive disorder. And so sometimes I was like, oh my God, I am not human. And so for me, it was very confusing because nobody ever told me, it's like, hey, sometimes stuff happens. I didn't have that vocabulary until like high school when the school counselor was like, you seem like you're going to kill yourself. Oh, wow. We should address that. And I was like, what are you talking about? I just have a personality flaw. There's just something wrong internally with me. I am the issue here.
Oh, boy.
So I've heard similar stories from a lot of my friends because, like, one of my best friends, Kat, who was the co-host of the podcast up to this point, her family was Vietnamese. And so culturally, they also didn't really believe in mental health issues until, like, she was growing up and they were like, oh, Kat also has bipolar disorder. And so they're like, oh, something's not quite right with our daughter, so let's educate ourselves. And I feel like that is one of the biggest roadblocks in mental health for a lot of people, is that education. And now, while neither of us are professionals, I do think that having these conversations early, like your mother tried to do, is very important, which is why this podcast exists and why I'm so happy to have you here with me.
I'm happy to be here and talk about this stuff.
Yeah. So, you mentioned Kiraheim briefly.
I did, yeah.
What is up with that?
Oh boy. That's my fault.
You can keep your secrets. It's fine.
No,
I mean, secrets don't make friends.
It's not really. It's okay. It's not really a secret. Like, I mean, if you know anything about me, then you know that I've probably spoken to you about Kiraheim at least 5 times since knowing you. Kiraheim is the foam fighting group that I am a part of, and you are a part of as well.
You as in the audience, or you as in me?
You as in you. You as in you. I'm pointing, but no one can see.
You didn't point at first.
I'm pointing with my eyes. I mean, Val, you're part of Kiraheim.
I am. I'm a newbie.
Yeah, I scouted you.
You scouted me.
I did, because we had this conversation at work.
Yeah, we did. We did talk about that. How do you feel that a foam fighting group, or any sport for that matter, has affected your mental health?
Oh my gosh, I'm a completely different person. It is crazy to think about how I was prior to joining Kiraheim versus like how I am now. Definitely a confidence booster. Definitely like just feel all around better about life, because Kiraheim, originally what was like a fun thing to do on like a Saturday with like my nephew, became like so much like a found family, and like such like a tightly like a close integrated like community that I could not imagine life without it. And maybe that sounds like, you know, like you care an awful lot about this foam fighting thing. Well, yeah, because it's really cool. And like it's one of those things that's why I will always tell people about it, because I think everyone should get a chance to experience that.
Feeling really cool.
Feeling really cool, but also just experiencing the community that we have. Like,
yeah, I mean, you guys got one of the most diverse communities I've seen in the Sacramento area. Like, period.
Yeah.
And I've lived here for like 4 or 5 years, I guess, at this point. I've been married for a couple years now, believe it or not. Can't believe it's been that long. But since being here, and I work in a pretty diverse workplace myself, but I have met the most interesting people with the community.
Oh, for
at
sure.
Kiraheim.
For sure.
I still can't pronounce it. Kiraheim.
I mean, it's like potato. I hear Kuros, I hear Koros, I hear all
Koroheim.
Tony used to say Koroheim, I think, a lot. There's a video on YouTube of him saying Koroheim. I think he's like the end clip that they use where he goes, "Welcome to Koroheim," and then he laughs. It's like it was amazing. But like, oh man, this whole intro is just gonna be about Kiraheim now. So like
we're like 17 minutes in.
Are we really?
Yeah, we are.
Oh man,
this is how it works.
Oh, I am a fan of this because I was like struggling in the beginning. We're in it now.
I want the audience to recognize that this is your first time ever being on audio medium, or really presenting in the audio format. It's very different than public speaking.
It is. And
I am staring at him very intensely in my very girly plushy room.
I mean, you know, the lights are a comfort. The staring is, I'm getting used to it.
Yeah,
but,
you're getting used to me.
Yeah, no, it's so different. I'm so used to being able to like scan a crowd and like of like, you know, the youth that I work with. I'm so used to being able to scan the crowd and like make eye contact with you, and then I'm going to talk for a little bit, and then I'm going to go over here to the other side, and now I'm talking to you, and it's a conversation that we're all having. But this is just a conversation that you and I are having, and then a whole mess of people that I have no idea
Yeah.
from what walks of life that they're from, and that part's terrifying. Just
It's
a
okay.
little bit.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to feel better, go back to the very first episode ever of this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's atrocious. And if you want to hear something honestly atrocious, try to dig up some of my old FM radio clips from when I was a radio DJ. That was honestly atrocious. I don't know how I didn't get fired week 1. They kept me on for a whole season, so wasn't too bad. Thank you very much.
Oh my gosh.
But
I might have to.
this brings up an interesting point that we kind of touched on earlier, and we're definitely going to do a deep dive on later on in the season. Imposter syndrome pops up with you all the time since I've met you, and we've been friends for maybe
months.
Yeah, we've been friends for a while, and we quickly became friends. Like, I met you and I was like, you sir right there will be my friend. You have no choice in the matter. I'm not asking for consent. I am thrusting myself upon you.
Yeah. No, you really messed up when you mentioned that you used to LARP in college. I was like, ooh.
I did.
Let me tell you about this cool LARP group that I'm part of.
Yeah.
I'm slowly becoming my entire personality. But that's fine. I love it.
Yeah, but like all this comes about. So I've known you for a while. We got pretty good friends pretty quickly. But I noticed you always downplay every single accomplishment. I feel like imposter syndrome is just tattooed on your forehead.
Oh boy.
Maybe they tattooed because I've been watching Ink Master for the last year, but binged the whole series. But anyways, yes, imposter syndrome. You're like in the process of blushing, looking very uncomfortable as I bring it up.
No, because you're right. You're right. When you're right, you're right.
Obviously.
You're right. Oh gosh. So I don't know exactly. There's no way I could possibly like pinpoint like when that started happening, but I do believe it has some sort of like root in growing up with a religious background of like, you know, humility is like close to God, and so like if ever there's an accomplishment or a compliment, I'm notoriously bad at taking compliments. Like you could say like, you know, I like what you're wearing. It's like it's just my clothes. I immediately try and like take away from it, but I think it's because of like the you know, it's false humbleness. I must have learned like the wrong sense of humbleness, but it's like I don't want to get such a big head. That
you don't want to have a head. You are short. So, you have shoulders, but no head. That's
fair. But I think that's my biggest fear is like, you know, growing to like have an inflated ego. So I'd rather just like check myself before like ever give myself a foothold.
And do you think that's good for you?
I don't think it's good for me, but it's how I've navigated life, and I'm doing okay. I'll be honest and say I'm doing okay. Not great, but I'm doing okay. And I know that in recent months I've been honestly trying to work on that with newfound confidence, courtesy of Kiraheim. But it's just hard. Like something so ingrained, like just from like early childhood, like it's difficult. Also, there was a season of life where if something did not pan out, I was concerned that it was like I messed up. And so if something goes right, now it's like I don't want to get so excited about this thing and have it go wrong. I was super jazzed and like excited to become like a pastor when I was like, I think I started schooling when I was 18, like almost fresh out of high school.
That's so young to make up your decision for like your life.
It really was. I was going to a church that was like really speaking a good word, and I got fired up, and I was like, I'm gonna preach the gospel the rest of my life. That's what I want to do. And I think I still will, but just not from like a pastoral, like, you know, I'm not going to do it from a pulpit. But I'll just simply like tell people about, you know, Jesus when I can, however I can, demonstrating it through my life and how I live. But that didn't pan out. Obviously, that didn't pan out. Like I got 6 months into the year-long schooling, and then the pastor who was leading that program left the church, and no one picked up the slack after him. Like the head pastor was too busy, worship pastor couldn't do it because they had so much to do. No one on staff could take that. And so there was like, it was me and 2 other students were just sort of like, well, now what? All I could think to do was to continue doing my responsibilities, which per the schooling, I was basically the church's intern. So I was coming in during weekdays and I was resetting the chairs.
You were the intern that messed up my sound equipment.
I will neither confirm or deny. I was doing bathroom, like, oh my gosh, when I think about it, it's crazy how much I was doing for free and telling myself that it was for the Lord, like for the kingdom. Because that was also like, I didn't realize until later, but there was such dogma in that church, like it was ridiculous. Because I was showing up, serving faithfully multiple days out of the week, and still the head pastor was like, you know, it's kind of weird that as a guy, you enjoy being around children so much.
Oh my God, I remember you telling me about this.
And so slowly but surely, he began to sow like the seeds of doubt in this gift that I had, because like I could approach like the most like, you know, wallflower kid, and just like, you know, hey, I'm Jake, I'm the volunteer here. Like, what's your name? And like a week later or so, that kid's got friends because I would just like help them make friends. And it was cool. I liked that. But then I listened to the whispers and I started to feel really like unclean about that. I led to doubts. And so here was a thing that I felt very confident in doing. And then it was made sour in my mouth. And so I think that is one of the contributing factors, because then that happened again with missionary work, and that happened once more with going to college, because I did like a year and a half in college, and I figured out like I don't know what I'm doing here. Everyone says go to college, but I don't really have a plan. I'm not saying don't go to college. I'm saying if you're going to go to college, have a plan. And if you don't want to go to college, there's trade school.
There's so many options.
I had to learn that like the hard way, but like, you know, there's more to life than just college.
Yeah. I think that's a common theme though, but for a lot of people that grew up religious, is that something that they found really fulfilling or fit really well in their life didn't fit up with what is expected in terms of gender norms. Because I've seen you work with kids. You not just light up in a way that like people light up when they're doing something excited. You light up in a way that I remember seeing my older sister light up when she was figuring out how to teach me to do makeup. You light up in a very nurturing way, and being a nurturing man is not necessarily something a lot of churches will encourage.
No, not at all.
Being a woman who's not quite the most nurturing thing in the world comes naturally to me. You're laughing because you know how rough around the edges I am. But I see it's a common thing, even with people like you who still have that faith and who religion still matters to you, trying to figure out how do you bring that into your life, but also not let all the stereotypes and other things weigh you down as well. I think will be an interesting thing that I can never really explore with anybody else on this podcast, because Kat was in spiritualism. I'm an atheist. Ryan is the atheist of atheists in a way that I'm like, I guess I would be agnostic, because it's like, I'm not smart enough to know. But I know I'm smart enough to tell when somebody's bullshitting me. So I think it'll be really interesting, and I think, or I hope at least, my listeners and now your listeners are interested in getting a really different worldview.
Listeners.
You do have listeners.
Oh no.
And they've been listening to you for like 27 minutes.
I'm so sorry.
No, but I think it's important to see that there's different ways of life and different ways of believing, and that just because you believe in something that somebody else doesn't, it doesn't mean that you're a bad person, or that they're a bad person, or that you can't get along, or that you can't care about each other.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I've been coexisting with my nephew, notorious, like at one point agnostic, but then I think he dipped a little bit into like straight up anti-theism. We would clash all the time.
I bet.
I mean, you've met him. It's Nyrez I'm talking about. So we would clash all the time, and I used to think of it as like, good thought exercises, like, like apologetics, defending my faith.
It's really important to have those thought exercises, because if you are in like a cult, it's those thought exercises that will save you from drinking Kool-Aid.
That's very true.
There's a distinct difference coming from a person who's not in a religion. There's a distinct difference between a religion and a cult.
Yeah.
And doing thought exercises and having the freedom to do them is one huge red flag. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, I appreciate that you would have those, because you and I have had those thought exercises, because, again, I decided that you were going to be my friend, and you had no choice in the matter.
Yeah.
I think it was, like, day 2. I was like, hey, what's your stance on religion?
It was day 2. I came into the conference room, and I was, like, cleaning. And I don't remember how the conversation started, but I do remember...
It was probably me just directly asking you with a smile on my face.
Maybe. I might have been humming like some sort of like a
hymn or
like
something.
A hymn or something. I might have been. Because I can't for the life of me figure out how we went to, just like, hey, how's your day going? To like, so what are your thoughts on religion?
Pleasantries to, let's talk about one of the most controversial topics in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I can't remember. I do remember that conversation.
You looked at me like, this bitch.
No, I remember being blown away by some of the things that you were telling me. And just like, yeah, well.
I have lots of big thoughts. I'm just not very smart.
You're plenty smart. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to figure that out too. Like, I know for as long as I've been believing that there's been purpose behind it. I don't know. I can't claim to know like the whole truth. I don't think there's anyone short of a prophet, short of like a new prophet that just like pops up out of nowhere.
I know somebody that claims they are. Would you like to meet him?
Oh yeah. I'd be very interested to meet the next prophet.
Yeah, apparently it's my grandfather on my mother's side.
Oh, Lord, that's right. That's right.
I've showed you his YouTube channel. I will not link it because I will not put our listeners down that rabbit hole.
Right.
But there's modern day prophets. They use the word prophet to self-describe themselves.
Yeah.
You are so uncomfortable.
No, no. It's not uncomfortable. It's like, how do I go about, what do I do with that? Because I remember those videos, and I remember just being, I don't want to say disturbed, but I was moved in not so positive a way, where it's like, so I have a problem with people who like misinterpret or they like grandstand on religion. I do not appreciate, I'm not going to say hate, because hate's a strong word. I don't appreciate street prophets or street preachers.
What about televangelists?
Oh my god.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is season 2, or maybe
Joel Osteen.
Or maybe even season 1, we're going to have an episode strictly on religion between two friends with very different stances who don't hate each other over it.
Right. Joel Osteen.
The money in the toilet wall.
Oh my god. There's just so much wrong with that.
I love it.
I think if you're actually like, okay, I'm gonna say this and then I'm gonna stop because I don't want to become like, the Jesus podcast. But like Jesus in the book that is like the Word of God in the Bible, right?
Your Bible.
Huh?
Your Bible.
In my Bible. I will say my Bible. In my Bible. Jesus sets up what leadership should look like. And he does that when he meets with his followers and he like washes their feet, something that a servant would do, And he's the teacher. And so if anything, his disciples should be washing his feet, but no, he gets out the bucket and he washes their feet. And the disciples are even freaking out about it because they know like culturally, like that's not something that the teacher should do. But he's setting up like this example of like leadership should be not like, manager up at the top and then like, employees at the bottom, but it should be upside down where it's the managers at the bottom and they're doing everything that they can to set up the employees and everyone else below them up for success, because that's what a leader does. That's how leadership should work. So like Joel Osteen should be at the bottom of his pyramid scheme.
Oh, pyramid scheme. That was a big claim.
I Okay, scheme escaped, but I meant pyramid.
No, you didn't. That was a Freudian slip. If I've ever heard one, I'd write an essay on you and I'd get at least a B in class.
I'm going to be contacted by Joel Osteen's legal team, but that's fine.
Okay.
I'll fight that fight.
That would be great because I hate to say it, but any publicity is good publicity.
Oh my goodness.
Could you imagine the sponsorships?
Yeah.
We'll donate some of the sponsorships to... We'll find a charity.
Sure.
And that if that is what happens, we will find a charity and we'll donate some of the profits. But it won't be one of the charities you and I work at because that is like the most of biases.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, that was our first episode. Thank you so much for coming. I'm so excited to do this next season with you. I think this is gonna I hope we both learn a lot from each other, and definitely. I hope our audience has room to have this conversation with us on social media, have conversations with their loved ones. Thank you so much for listening, you guys, and we'll catch you next week.
Yep. See you later.
Bye.
Join the conversation. Find us on social media at It's Working Podcast or link below.
Thanks for listening, and we hope you join us next week.
Be kind to yourself and to others.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty. Man, we just putting on a show. Oh, you know, I try to find a purpose in my life to drive me, to guide me. Oh, doctor, I feel dead inside.
Do you shudder internally when you witness a Karen going off on some innocent service industry worker?
Do you consume bad fan fiction and/or have tattoos from your favorite TV shows?
Do you strain to listen in on the awkward date stories of strangers?
Is your family the worst and you just don't want to feel alone?
Then we might have the podcast for you. Cringe With Me, the podcast where we dig up the cringiest articles, questions, and tidbits of human culture to review with you, our listeners, so you can cringe with me.
Look up Cringe With Me on your favorite podcast directory.
Only one